I wonder at what point you stopped listening to the gospel this morning. Yes, I said stopped. It may well have been right at the finish. Sufficient is a day in its own evil. It might have been the second verse. No one can serve two masters. It might have been you cannot serve God and Mammon. And certainly by the time we got about not worrying about our food and our clothes, we'd tuned out, many of us, and thought, well, it's kind of like last week. It's all right for Jesus, those 2,000 years ago, to go on about this. You know, last week telling us that we had to love our enemies and pray for those who persecute us. And I hope I broke that open for you last week. Because in the gospel, Jesus speaks to us. And if Jesus is speaking to us, we should listen. We might just hear something. Serve God or Mammon. Mammon, the best translation of it, is something that you put your trust in. Who do you put your trust in? You put your trust in God, or you put your trust in Mammon, whatever your Mammon might be. Because I think we live in a very self-indulgent time, self-centered. It's all about us. What could we get out of it? I think we're ill-served by our politicians, the way that they behave. The way that they try and have more winners than losers, manipulating us. You might have noticed during the week, the Speaker of the Parliament in Victoria, and then yesterday the Deputy Speaker, had been double-dipping, caught out. $40,000. And it follows a similar pattern of Susan Ley famously going up to Queensland on a government plane to buy a unit, or Bronwyn Bishop going to Geelong in a helicopter. They follow a similar pattern. Well, it's in the rules. I actually haven't broken the rules, but I realise now this isn't up to community expectations. Is it right or is it wrong? That's the question, nothing else. And I'd long for a politician to say, yeah, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I think that what we need is a good dose of humility. I think we puff ourselves up and think we're very important. And the reverse is true. And if we had more humility, we're more likely to hear God speaking to us. And if you want to listen in humility, just think of these figures. Imagine since the creation of the earth until the present time, by a 24-hour clock, our human species, how much before midnight have we occupied God's creation? If it was a 24-hour clock, our entry into the 24 hours of world history would be 38 seconds. Now, I'm going to do you all a favour because I'm told we're living longer these days, so I'm going to give you all 100 years of age. I'm going to let you live to 100. Yes? It's easier to do the sums. So, given we occupy the world here for 100 years, how does that equate on the 24-hour clock to how much before midnight? Well, our 100 years, that's yours and mine, is worth exactly 1/2000th of a second. One 2,000th of a second. On Monday night, I went to home from the RCO. Went to Channel 2 and I looked at Media Watch, and then I watched Q&A. And I made a decision that I'm not going to watch Q&A again, because I am sick at politicians yelling at each other, blaming one another, not taking responsibility and not getting on with governing. And it's not all their fault. We elect a government and don't let them govern. See, I must be able to have an intelligent conversation with people and imagine it as a pie, a pie graph. The pie represents the money coming in, the revenue that our country takes in. Of course, a budget has to be formed, and that pie's got to be cut into pieces. So we've got defence and health and education and infrastructure and all sorts of things. And then once the budget is handed down by the government, the Senate gets hold of it and say, we like this, but we don't like that. We have this, we have that, we have that. Now, no government probably gets it right, but it just stands to reason that if somebody gets more, somebody's going to get less. And it's a magic pudding when politicians tell you they're going to grow the pie. Grow the pie and then, and only then, spend the money. See, the Treasurer in 2015 said that at that time, and it would be far worse 2 years later, we as a country are spending $100 million a day, $100 million a day more than we've got money coming in. $40 million a day, $40 million a day is paying interest on the money that we owe because we're living beyond our means. My friends, you know that the household budget, you can't do that. And I tell you this, we are not being fair to our generation coming up. We are living beyond our means, and I think it's morally corrupt if we spend more than we're earning. And see, politicians, they've got to have an enemy. Look at some of them now, bullies, and they've got to have an enemy. Trump, a bully. But he's got to have an enemy, doesn't he? So he demonises the Mexicans or the Muslims or the press. Duterte in the Philippines. You know, drug pushers will shoot them on sight. Or Putin, goodness knows, people of Ukraine or wherever, the enemies. Got to have somebody to beat up on. And we're not immune from that ourselves. I can well remember the attitude that we had towards Vietnamese boat people. I can, and that translates to asylum seekers today. So we've got to get real and think. Because I've got to tell you this, that God spoke to me this week. Not in the sense of me hearing words, but on Tuesday I went to the Western General Hospital and had a procedure that required me being knocked out for 40 minutes. I took a book with me, with Love and Prayers, subtitle A Headmaster Speaks to the Next Generation by F. Washington Jarvis. As I was waiting to go into the operating theatre, I was reading this book, knowing that night, Tuesday night, I had to speak to the school and government school parents who have children in the sacramental years. I was reading the book and I read a sentence and I knew instantly that God was communicating with me. Instantly. I couldn't sleep much that night, probably got about an hour's sleep. Something again happened to me on Thursday, where I believe God communicated with me again. Guess what? Couldn't sleep for the whole night. Tossed and turned, got up at 4 o'clock and went over to the office and started doing some work. And I'm not telling you something after the event, because before I spoke to the parents, I told our principal that I didn't know how long I'd be speaking for, but I believe the Holy Spirit was leading me. And do you know what? Everything that happened since is absolutely consistent with that. I just would like to tell you that I have such an inner peace. I feel a sense of calmness, and I said what was needed to be said, and I stand by it. So, do you serve God or Mammon? What is your Mammon? Because I think that we're fortunate that we have the liturgical year, because we've got Lent beginning on a Wednesday with Ash Wednesday. It gives us a chance to press the restart button. Some people tell me they're giving up sugar in their tea for Lent. To them I say, good luck to you. You have to decide what you're going to do about Lent. You have to decide. What I ask you to do is to still yourselves and listen to God speaking to you. Because I promise you, God will speak to you. And as I say that, I realise how often, with the frenetic pace of my ministry, Do I not stop and listen to God? I don't intend making that mistake again. Give you a couple of quick things and then I just need to wind up. We had a table there. Somebody's moved the table. Hopefully it'll be back there with after we're looking to form a vision statement. It's been in the bulletin. We've told you that we're doing this. We've got words that have been up on the screens. These are some of the words that core groups come up with. And last week it was in the bulletin, it was mentioned, have a survey of the parishioners to see what words they feel are important to include in our vision statement. How many filled that out before Mass? And ask yourself why you did it or why you didn't do it. Did you see the table and say, oh, that's nothing for me? Got our stewardship envelopes over there. Do you have stewardship envelopes? Whether the answer is yes or no, ask yourself the question as to why you do what you're doing. See, we've got to understand the why. We've got to understand that we are a community of believers gathered around the table of the Lord. I feel we're too turned in on ourselves. It's like, as I mentioned to the parents on Tuesday night, I feel that some are merely customers coming to a service centre. The way you go to Coles, you want something, you go in there, you get it, and then you leave. Until you go back next time when you want something again. Is that a community of faith-filled people? Is that pointing outwards? Is that making disciples of others? So I think it's wonderful that we've got Lent beginning on Wednesday. It's a privileged and a blessed time. Let's use it. There's a Mass in the morning at 9:30 with the school, and there's a Mass at 7 o'clock in the evening. You cannot serve God and Mammon.